it gets going. Okay. All right, well, hello everybody. We are pivoting. Welcome to Love the Earth, Love Yourself. This was meant to be broadcast to Facebook Live. Facebook is giving us problems, so we are videoing this instead, and the video will be posted to my Facebook. And if you happen to have gone to the page, you might see that there is a Zoom link. So we will have some people who are going to be coming in via Zoom as we're going. But I want to go on ahead and dive into the beautiful wisdom that nature has to share with us and get into this really grounding, healing energy. So I'm so delighted that you're here, and I'm delighted that you care enough about the earth and care enough about yourself to carve out space to take this time and be in your heart and be in your wisdom and connect to not just each other, but connect to the natural world. I really develop my relationship with nature. And I say relationship with nature because that's how I see it, as being in relationship with the world around me and being in relationship with the natural world. And for me, that happened in really astonishing ways back about a decade ago. And I had gone through a divorce, and I was single at the time, and I was living in this like teeny tiny shoebox of an apartment at the bottom of somebody's townhome. So it felt a little dungeon-like. If I was in there too long, it quickly went from like cozy to claustrophobic. And I found myself needing to access wide open spaces. And at the time I had 2 or 3 kind of like BethAnne safe places that I would go to. And in those safe places, I would go sit on a park bench, or I would take a walk. I had these trails. And that's when I really started to, I didn't have anybody else, but I had the land, and I had my thoughts, and I had the trees and the birds and the clouds. And I really started to develop a sense of belonging with these places that I kept returning to. There was something really beautiful and intimate that came from watching a tree change seasons and watching how the sunset might shift in the sky as the days went by, and the nights either grew longer or they grew shorter. And that's when I really developed a sense of intimacy and relationship with the natural world, and beginning to receive messages from the natural world. And I didn't understand that I was intuiting nature at the time. I just would notice that I felt calmer after I was sitting by a tree, or that I'd write a little poem when a bird flew by. And it was another intuitive healer who read some of my poetry who said to me, "Wow, you realize you're a channel for nature, and these are the channeled poetry." And I said, "No, I had no idea. I was just doing me, and these things were coming through organically." And I think that's what's so profound about connecting with the earth, is we don't have to reach for faith or belief. We don't have to strive to receive messages. It happens in this really intuitive, organic way that meets each of us exactly where we're at. So that was a decade ago, and here I am now celebrating Earth Day with whoever joins us, and I'm teaching and sharing some of the wisdom that nature has to offer us. And before we go any further right now, I always start classes that I do with setting intentions. So I'm going to have each of us just take a moment and put our hands on our heart. Go on ahead and close your eyes and just get comfortable within yourself, comfortable in your heart rhythm, comfortable in your body. And just go on ahead and think about, what would you like to get out of this time together? Would you like to feel more grounded? Would you like to come out a little bit more healed and whole? Do you have stress that you're shaking off right now that you're wanting to leave behind and just leave here tonight? Or maybe you're coming into a new season in your life and you want to do things to expand your growth and to expand goodness. Whatever that is for you, just set your intention for this time. And with your breath, exhale it out into the air around you, exhale it into the universe. Trust that your angels and guides and the energies that are supporting you are taking it exactly where it needs to go. Your prayers are being heard. Your intentions are being heard, and they will be answered. And as you inhale, go on ahead and imagine that you are inhaling everything you need to have your intention met, and everything you need to meet you where you are right now at this moment in life and be fully supported. And just give gratitude for whatever's going to show up for you with the intention that you set, trusting and knowing that it will be answered and that you are seen and you are held and you are loved. Now going ahead and you can move your shoulders around a little bit and drop your chin to your chest and give your head a little shake. And as you feel ready, come back into the space. Beautiful. We can't really understand how to connect with nature if we don't understand what's happening with the earth at this time. So I want to start tonight with talking about what is happening with the energies on the planet and how that's impacting us individually. The Akashic Records talked about the year 2021 being a year of earth change and a year where the planet is realigning herself and she is healing herself. Sometimes healing doesn't look the way that we think it's going to. And if you've ever been through profound healing in your life, you know that often healing doesn't come from like sitting by the ocean and feeling better. Often healing comes from going through something really challenging and really difficult that stirs everything up. And it's like a tornado blew into your life. And it's only after that's happened that you can go like sit by the ocean or this lake or take a bath and kind of receive like healing and goodness and restoration. So some of what we're seeing happening on the planet at this time with climate change and natural disasters is the earth realigning herself and doing what she needs to heal herself. And that has been consistent guidance that I've received from multiple sources of higher wisdom that say, look, we know the surface looks crazy right now, but this is what's actually happening like on your planet and actually happening with the heart of the earth. So we are connected to the earth and we are living on the earth. And if she is going through realignment and change, that means we are going to experience it as well, because she's basically mothering all of us, if you will, in the sense that she's providing space for each of us. So we are impacted by what's happening on a personal level, and that is going to look different for each of us. And my question to you would just be to reflect on what's been realigned in your life. And where might that energy be showing up for you, where you're seeing maybe certain doors shut while new ones open, or you're being relocated into, it might even be a new location or new friendships or new ways of being. We are going through those shifts. And as we know, change is a process. It's not something, and healing is a process. It's not something that kind of is supposed to happen within the first quarter of this year, and then everything's great. There are ebbs and flows to that. So we can expect in the year of 2021 that we will have ebbs and flows to our own shifts and our own changes and our own realignment. And that's just kind of where we're at. And that brings up the question of when you are literally like living on a planet who's shifting underneath you, how in the world do you find grounding and balance? And how do you manage to find a sense of stability and a sense of security and a sense of not getting sucked into not just the craziness happening in the world, but sometimes it can be the craziness that's happening in our own life and things that are happening in our own life. And that is where harmonizing ourselves with the energies of nature is the most amazing grounding tool, because instead of trying to change our own, we'll call it vibration or frequency, whatever you will. I always picture each of us as musical instruments who have the ability, like if we were guitars, we could tune ourselves and we could, tune our notes and get them more crisp and clear, or we could do it the wrong way and we could be out of tune. So it is easier to tune in to nature because nature's already holding the frequencies of love and of harmony and of peace and of moving towards wellness. When we are feeling out of sync, it can be a lot harder to invite the energy of wellness into ourselves without a way to ground it and without a way to focus it. So I love working with the energy of nature in order to do that. And that's some of what we're going to be doing in our guided meditation tonight. Nature teaches us things about ourselves that are inherent to us as a soul that we forget on our human journey. She teaches us that we already belong. There is zero aspect in the natural world that is not meant to be here. She manages to hold space for every single person on this planet, and she doesn't turn you away based on who you are or what you've done. You know, when it's summertime, if you live by the lake or you're by the ocean and people get in the water, she doesn't say only you guys can go in and you're not allowed to because you're not suited for the water. She allows whoever wants to step into her and to utilize her and to work with her and enjoy her. She holds space for them because she knows each of us is here and each of us belongs and each of us has a purpose. Even when we aren't able to see that in each other, she sees that in us. She teaches us that part of our purpose is to be our most authentic expression of self. And if you observe the natural world and you will say, just we'll take animals, they're a great example. You know, a cat is different than a dog, is different than an iguana, is different than a giraffe. And each of them is this like really beautiful, unique creation that's not meant to be some other animal than what it is. It's meant to come here and to be whatever expression that we'll call it that nature being, that animal being has come through as. And so we are taught to do the same. We are taught that we are here to be our most authentic expression. And we are taught that we're not meant to compare ourselves and run around and try and be something that we're not. We are meant to be exactly who we are. And that's divinely ordained. That's not a selfish thing. That is creation's invitation to us, creator's invitation to us to say, I made you unique. And so your, we'll say job, your soul work is to honor that in every way that you know how, and to be the most authentic expression that you know to be. And the other thing that nature teaches us is that the highest forms of wisdom are really simple. They're not complex. They are not things that make our mind spin and that we have to keep riddling out. You know, there are a lot of mysteries in this world, and there are a lot of things that we might not understand about what's going on. We'll call it behind the curtain in the more etheric realms. But nature helps us come back to the simple truth of how to live well when we tune into her. And if you do ever go talk to a tree, my mentor taught me that. She said, go talk to a tree. It took me a while to realize that the tree's message to me was simply the energy of peace and calm. I might not get like a dissertation back, you know, or even an essay or something like that. That nature speaks in energy and imagery and color and feeling and sometimes very simple messages. But it's never going to give you this overcomplicated explanation. And so nature really brings us into our heart wisdom, because that's how our heart wisdom speaks to us. It does not complicate things. It lets us know what we need right now in this given moment. Just a little bit ago when we were not broadcasting to Facebook Live, and I said we're just going to pivot and adapt, that message was coming through so strongly from whatever's behind me. And I just felt, well, we'll adapt. We don't have to overthink this. It's just what we're going to do. It wasn't an overly complicated explanation. It was channel the energy of adaptation and do the thing. So here we are. We are adapting. That's how nature supports us. We don't have to freak out. It helps us find the easiest way through and the simplest way through. Nature helps us return to the truth of who we are. She helps us return to who we are as a soul. She helps bring us back into our bodies and our senses and our joy and our pleasure. Part of what I love about Earth Day, which is on the 22nd, but this event is on the 20th, is that the sun just moved into Taurus yesterday. And Taurus in the zodiac represents Earth energy, and it represents being in romance with the Earth and being grateful for the natural world around us and allowing our senses to kind of lead the way, where we appreciate and we might smell or taste or savor in a way where our focus is on pleasure and on delight and on joy and on enhancing those energies in our life. So that's a beautiful way to work with the cycles right now, is to think about over the next 20 something days, how can you romance the earth and invite the earth to romance you back? How can you savor more? How can you create moments in your life? We'll call them like little moments of daily rituals where you make the everyday magical by being more mindful and saying, you know what, I'm going to have a cup of mint tea and I'm going to savor every sip. And I'm just so grateful for the herb that is meant for providing this taste. That is what takes ordinary moments and it makes them extraordinary. And that's really how we find magic in the everyday. I always teach that before you can have that like big sort of more divine revelatory moment where you feel super cosmically connected or spiritually connected, or however you might think about that. The most magic you're going to find is through gratitude. It is going to be through being in nature and appreciating. It is going to be through infusing your daily life with beautiful moments and appreciating those moments. If we can't make magic in the everyday and hold space for it to happen, like just in our material lives, it's a lot harder for those things to happen in our spiritual connection and our spiritual relationship. And nature helps us remember that we are connected to the world around us. We are connected to the cycles. We are connected to each other. We are connected to each moment. If you just take a step back and look at, we'll say, a mountain or a park, and you really look at like the whole instead of the sum of its parts, and you see the grass, and maybe there's a pond, and maybe there's ducks, and the sky is part of the composition, and this maybe the sun is shining, or maybe it's gray out, and you know, you're just appreciating all of that. It all holds a place. It all has a purpose. All of it has a job to do. And so there's this connection and this intertwining between everything that is. And when we harmonize with nature and we harmonize our hearts to all that is, we become part of that interconnection. We become part of that intimacy. And that's what I was talking about when I opened up earlier with teaching. When I was really first experiencing nature in a profound way, it was realizing that I belonged to so much more than just myself. I belong to not only myself, but I belong to this earth. You know, I belong to the energy surrounding me. I belong to everybody else who's here, having a human experience as a soulful being, which can be a very challenging thing. You know, we belong to each other. And that energy is part of what has helped me move through daily challenges and struggles with more peace inside of me. It helps me hold space for other people who might be radically different than me. And maybe in BethAnne's sort of egocentric opinion, I would not make their life choices, and I don't even know what they're doing on their path, and I don't get it. But it helps me say, look, something bigger is holding space for me to be here and to have these experiences. And so I can hold space and let other people have their own journey, even if it's not mine to follow, and even if it's not one that I understand. There's a grace, I think, that comes from working with nature, and an invitation to have more grace for one another and to understand that it's not our job to know and sort of solve the riddle of their journey. We can let it go and trust that somebody else bigger is guiding them, and simply stay on our own path. But we can be free to be our highest expression of self and free up our own energy to focus on that instead of focusing on other people and what they're doing and on their paths. Nature's holding space for them. We don't have to. And I love that, because a lot of people, especially women, and the few men who resonate with my work, really identify as being empaths and highly sensitives, and women who hold a lot of space for other people and who hold a lot of compassion for other people. And so many of us historically have kind of bared the burden of everybody else's emotional garbage and baggage, and done a lot of emotional labor on other people's behalf. I know that I have been an emotional custodian for many spaces that were not my own to sweep up and clean. And the idea that something bigger is holding space for them so I don't have to is, to me, revelatory. That's a revolution right there of empathic liberation and freedom. So I can really use my gifts with the people that I feel called to, and not the people who, we'll say, the energy vampires who want to take them. We release them to nature. We release them to the universe, release them to higher power. So all of this all of this wisdom comes when you tune into the natural world. And these were lessons that were coming through in profound ways for me back before I really fully developed my intuitive channeling of gifts. This was just learned through relationship and observation with the natural world around me. So no matter how intuitive you think you are and where you're at on your spiritual journey with that, you know, or where you might not think you are and where you would like the growth, you can rock your earth magic right now and have this amazing relationship with nature. And write down your reflections and observations and what she's teaching you. You can know that that is higher wisdom, and that if it's flowing through you, it's very likely channeled wisdom. And you can experience massive growth exactly where you're at through simply connecting with earth energies and energies of the natural world. Nature rocks. So we are going to do a guided meditation around nature tonight. And I'm actually working with different images. We're going to connect with a few different energies, and we're working our way through our chakra systems. Even though I didn't really spell it out like that, we're going to be sort of working our way from the root level on up. And I will end the meditation with reading a passage to you from one of my books called Heliotrope Nights. And it's a book that I wrote about nature. I'm smiling. I know that Robin's on this call, and she's actually was one of my reviewers for the book years ago. That is so fun. She wrote a cover review, talk about things coming full circle. But I'm reading a passage from Heliotrope Nights. And so all you have to do during that time is receive the words like story time medicine, and receive it as medicine for your heart. So, all right. Well, if you've not done these with me before, we put our hands on our heart and we close our eyes. And I just encourage you to do your best with this. Some people do a lot of guided meditation work and others don't. You really can't do this wrong though, because you're just doing yourself. So as long as you just do you to the best of your ability, you're gold. And if you find mental chatter or anything distracting you, it's fine. Just come back to my voice, come back to your heart, come back to it as you will. You can't do this wrong. And so with that, let's go on ahead and we'll put our hands in our hearts. And going ahead and just take a few deep breaths. And allow yourself to come into your heart. Allow yourself to trust that there's wisdom guiding you there tonight that's far more intelligent than the wisdom that your mind thinks it knows. And give yourself the gift of this moment and the gift of being in communion and connection with your soulful self and your heart wisdom and your intuitive knowing. You're using your imagination to support your spiritual connection, to support your healing, to support your nervous system and helping grounding come into your body. And we're going to begin tonight with just thinking about the earth herself. And I want you to think about the land that you're sitting on right now, wherever that is for you, whatever location you're in. And if you're in a building and you're not sitting directly on the earth, and even if you're on the second story floor higher, where you're at is connected to the earth. It is sitting on the land. And so just take a moment and think about the land that you're on, and think about we'll call them just the ancestors. They might not be your ancestors, but those who walked this land long before you were ever on it. And all the people who've lived in the space that you're currently at, and all the changes that the land has gone through. And since every part of the land has its own brand of magic wherever you live in the world, think about what's magical about the place that you live. Whether that's the desert, an island like me, even if you're in a city, where do you go when you go to the parks or you go to get a little bit outside of the city? What's magical about where you live and what do you love about it? And just give gratitude to the land and the ancestors and all the footsteps that walk there before you, and say thank you. And thank the land for supporting you. And I want you to think about that tonight. You are supported always. You are constantly upheld by the earth. So often we think we have to do it all on our own, or we feel like we're not supported because we're not seeing what we want to see in our lives. And yet the truth of nature is that we are upheld at every single moment. We are upheld by the earth. We are upheld by her gravity. We are literally being supported. So allow yourself to feel that sense of support tonight and feeling grounded and supported by the land itself. And now I want you to go on ahead and I want you to think about a tree. And just think about a tree, however it comes through in your imagination, whatever kind of tree that might be that's coming through for you. And I want you to think about how the trunk of a tree goes into the ground and it has deep roots that connect it and root it to the earth. Go on ahead and think about how trees don't say, I don't belong here. I'm going to pick myself up and move over here. Trees don't question whether they're meant to be on this earth. Trees don't question where they're planted and if they would be better off somewhere else. Trees just know that they're meant to be a part of this ecosystem. They know that they're rooted. They know that they're grounded. They know that they belong. And go on ahead tonight and just think about the affirmation, I belong here. That just like a tree, you belong to this time and you belong to this space. And though we might choose to move to new spaces on our human journey, though we might choose to find movement in our life in order to support our highest path and in order to be realigned, we can always know that when our roots are rooted into trusting life, to trusting the earth, to trusting God, to trusting higher power, to trusting our hearts, that we can always find a place of belonging. We can always find something to anchor into and know that we're meant to be here and that we have a purpose. And so go on ahead and give gratitude to the trees tonight and thank them for their wisdom and their lesson of helping us remember that we belong and that we can always anchor and ground our roots into something bigger than ourselves. And now I want you to go on ahead and think about a flower or flowers if you like, and think about how flowers are each different from one another, how some of them have different colors, they're all different varieties. There's different kinds of flora and fauna in the flower world. Think about how a daffodil is different than a rose, is different than a wildflower, is different than, we'll say, fireweed and forget-me-nots and flowers that were native to Alaska, the land that I grew up in. And think about how a flower represents this beautiful, creative, unique expression. And it doesn't matter to it that another flower is different. It's not comparing itself to, some other, we'll say, variety of flower. It's not wishing it was red if it's yellow. It's not wishing that it grew taller if it's, sprouting out of the earth and it's a wildflower. A flower just allows itself to be a flower, and it knows that its job is to bloom and to represent its highest expression of self. So I want you to think about that right now. And how can you be your most creative self in your life? How are you creatively authentic and different than everybody else? How can you embrace that in bigger ways without comparing your path or comparing the colors of your soul or the colors of your journey? How can you take the wisdom the flowers have to teach and allow it to support you in blossoming into your most powerful creative expression of self in your life, on your path, at your own pace, and in your own time? And go on ahead and just give gratitude to the flowers and to the energy of flower that teaches us to bloom and blossom, to never hide our colors, and to be our most creative expression of self. And now go on ahead and focus on your heart. And I want you to think about the ocean or the sea or a lake. And I want you to think about the energy of water and the medicine of water. And I want you to notice where your heart's at tonight. What needs to be washed away? What needs to be renewed? what might feel tired or in need of vitalization or in need of new life to flow into it, what might feel stagnant and you're ready to have that flow on out of your inner well. Acknowledge where you're at. And now think about how to find new flow. That old energies might pool within us, but there's always new water that's going to come in, helping us cleanse and release and renew ourselves. And just allow the energy and the medicine of water to meet your heart wherever it's at tonight, bringing in renewal. And go on ahead and thank the energy of water and thank it for its lessons of rejuvenation and restoration, and for being a life-giving force and a force of consciousness that helps our bodies heal and renew, and that brings new wisdom into us. And now go on ahead and think about a rooster. He finally popped down, but I can hear him making a voice, and it is going to let it out no matter where it's at, no matter who it's around, no matter what's going on, no matter what time of day it is. And I want you to think about the wisdom that roosters and birds teach us, who each have a song to sing. And they sing that song and they allow themselves to carry that noise without fear of judgment, without fear that as they're singing their truth, that somebody's going to ridicule them. They simply allow their unique song to be expressed in this world. And they do it for the joy. They do it because they can. They do it because they know it's part of their purpose. And I want you to take a moment and think about what we can learn from the roosters and what we can learn from the birds that are chirping in the background. And how can you express your voice in a freer way right now? How can you cast off fear of being judged, or fear of maybe being rejected, or fear of being unseen, and speak truth, and speak authenticity into the spaces that you're being called to speak into? Whether those are public spaces where you're being asked to show up in a public way, whether that is in your personal relationships and the people that you love, or whether that's speaking truth into your own self and your own life through your writing or your observations of yourself or your prayer, your meditation time. How can you be more bold like our rooster friend and let yourself crow and let yourself kind of strut your stuff and show your voice off a little bit more? And acknowledge whatever's coming through for you and where that is in your life. And let's go on ahead and thank our feathered friends who've joined us, not only metaphorically, but actually literally on this meditation today, and thank them for the wisdom that they teach us about allowing our voice to come out loud and true, and just trusting that these are truths we're meant to share with the world. And now we're going to work our way up to our eyes and our brow chakras, kind of where we're at, since we just did our throat chakra. And I want you to think about an image of a mountain, and how when you're standing on a mountaintop, you have this beautiful view of everything below you. Think about when you're on a mountain, or maybe if you've not been on top of a mountain, if you've been on top of a hill or been at a lookout point, how everything feels a little smaller, how this higher perspective comes through and life feels a little bit more manageable. Mountains teach us to see beyond what's happening in the day-to-day, and they help us connect with our discernment and our third eye and our inner knowing and our higher wisdom that helps us see this too shall pass, and there's always something bigger in the works going on. So think about in your life right now, where do you need some mountain medicine? Where could you have a little bit more higher perspective? Where could you see beyond the moment and trust that something bigger is going on that might be moving you towards your whole? Just acknowledge whatever that is for you. The energies and the lessons that the mountain teaches us, that we can always see a higher way. We can get up above the clouds and look. And last, we're going to work with the stars tonight. And I want you to go on ahead and think about being under a beautiful starry sky. The stars help us look up. They help us open our minds and our imaginations. They help us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. They remind us of the mysteries. They remind us that somebody's up there looking down on us. And they help us have a sense of transcendence and enlightenment and going upwards. And just think about right now in your life, what are you trying to transcend? What divine information has been flowing through for you that reminds you you're not alone? There's so much more than the eyes in your head can see, and that when you look with the eyes of your heart and you look with your inner knowing, you're reminded all around of the presence of the divine and just how loved and supported that you are. And know that when you're gazing up at the stars in awe and wonder, that the stars have their own souls and energies too, and they are gazing back down at you in awe and wonder. And they are saying, well done, you brave, brave soul, for deciding to come here and take this journey and be a spiritual being on a human plane and experience the things you are experiencing. You are so brave and you are so courageous. We are proud of you. Keep going. Go on ahead and just give gratitude to the wisdom of the stars that help us feel connected, that remind us of the mysteries, and that help us remember as well that no matter what happens, nothing can ever dull our shine. And as you're in this beautiful, peaceful place of just being in alignment with yourself, and whether or not you know it, we just aligned all of our chakras and did a big energetic clearing. Go on ahead and receive in your heart the words that I have to share tonight that are about remembering ourselves in nature. I must go be in nature with trees and sky and life, she said, or I forget what I'm about in this world. I forget how to breathe. I forget how to let go when a season turns. I forget how to stand still and receive. We remember who we are when we go to nature because nature understands what can be so hard for us to remember, our innate sense of belonging. If you pay attention, you will begin to see that everything has a place, a time, a purpose, and we, the gentle gusts that are our lives, are counted among the pattern. I find my truths in the musks of the woods, the olive sponge of the tundra, the rings within rings upon the trunks of strong trees. They are old and wise and never doubt that their purpose is to watch over us with vigilant tenderness, standing tall and taking their place in this time and space. In summertime, when the flowers riot and rose crashes against the red, against blue, surrounded by streams of emerald vine, I get lost in their dance. They bloom and shine and sing of fairies and sprites and claim their right to blossom into fullest effervescence. Be bold, be bright in their season of growth. The birds tie strings around my heart and pull me up, up, up. I fly high to the mountains, transcend my confine to self. They sing and find flight with joyful assurance, sweeping the airs as they've been called to do, constantly realizing their wings in blithe patterns of descent and ascension. I can tilt and fall and lose myself 50 times in one day, only to watch a lackadaisical cloud drift over a slope of blue, reminding me, including me, containing me in the canopy of sky that covers all. She never fails to put her arm around me and tell me a secret. You belong, you belong, you belong. You belong, each of you. And nature wants you to know that. And your guides and your angels want you to know that. God, and however you think of higher power and the mysteries, want you to know that. You belong, and you're here with purpose. Just take one more moment and give gratitude to any energies that felt extra supportive tonight, any insights you had, anything that showed up for you. Acknowledge any revelation or epiphany that came through. Acknowledge yourself and your willingness to show up for yourself and be in your heart and work with meditation. Acknowledge how you're supporting your body and you're inviting peace into your nervous system. And you are literally resetting your neural networks and your brain chemistry by doing this. Acknowledge that. Acknowledge how you're supporting yourself. Just say one final thank you to all that is. And then slowly begin to move your shoulders around. You can shake your head out if you want. Can kind of move your knees if you need to. I do. Take a few deep breaths, and as you feel ready, come back into the space. And you can open your eyes and come back together. All right, beautiful. Well, I'm going to do two things right now. First of all, I'm going to stay on this call for those who join via Zoom and offer the free readings. I'm not going to have us video that part because usually I do it where it's broadcasting to Facebook Live so people can sign up. So if you're on Facebook Live, I'm sorry that you missed your chance. Hopefully the technology will work in May and I can do it again that way and you can spontaneously receive a reading or come to the Zoom just to make sure that you get one next time in case we have technological issues again. But I want to thank everybody who watches this afterwards on Facebook or any other media source. Thank you so much for joining us. And I encourage you to celebrate Earth Day by going out and connecting with the earth. I chose to do this before Earth Day because it seemed counterintuitive to ask you to hop on a screen when Earth Day is actually about like being in romance with the earth and taking time to do something good for the earth. So that is my exhortation to you of how you celebrate Earth Day. And with that, that includes the videoed portion of this. Thank you again. And I'm wishing everybody much aloha and love. And if you're on Zoom, go on ahead and stick around.